Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 21st, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it seems like I'm caught in a vortex down here in the south. For 3 days, I had nothing but rain. I thought I was still living in the Pacific Northwest. Now I wake up this morning and it's freezing, so I don't know where I am. I'm kind of confused. I know it's supposed to be winter, but I don't know what to think of the weather.
Well, I hope you're not joining POTUS when you don't believe in global warming because it rains so much for you good old boys down south. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I also want to say, did you say that it's raining again? Or that did your neighbors go out of town to see the Fury and Wilder fight and forgot to turn off the sprinklers? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, they forgot to close the freezer door because it was damn cold down here this morning and all afternoon. I mean, it was freezing here in the south. I thought I was in Alaska or someplace, maybe even Chicago.
My grandmother, on my mom and dad's side, used to always say, "Close the door, baby, it's cold. It's so cold outside." Like grandma in summertime, it's still cold. So hopefully, Big C, you're not having some of that grandma hangover that a lot of good old boys have too. I want to pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline, Big C. They're experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones when they have issues, they need help. They can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And they can get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's so important because, we lose so many Americans every day to suicide, whether it's veterans, whether it's everyday citizens. And we never know what the outcome is, what that person may have been if they survived, Charlton, if they survived that suicide attempt. And a lot of people have. But, we need to find a way to get help for everybody who is even contemplating that horrific scenario of suicide, Charlton. And when we think about it, and we think of it being a final situation, I mean, think about people who have survived suicide attempts. And let me give you one perfect example, Charlton, and that's Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is a tight end for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
This guy now is playing on an $11 million contract. Unfortunately, Hayden Hurst tried to commit suicide, Charlton, back in 2016. Out of high school, he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, given a $400,000 signing bonus. You think the world is his oyster at that point. But unfortunately, Charlton, he lost command of his fastball. And he tried to commit suicide, Charlton, while he was with the Pirates organization. He took cocaine, Xanax, and slit his wrist, Charlton. Unfortunately, a friend of his came to his apartment and found him and got him the paramedics on time, Charlton, to assist him in staying alive. And now he's living a productive life, Charlton, because someone cared. Calling a suicide prevention hotline is great, but also being able to call a paramedics is the same type of thing. Luckily enough, he had friends that cared, Charlton, and now he's an active member of the greatest offense in the NFL last year in the Baltimore Ravens. All-pro tight end. He went to South Carolina as a walk-on, Charlton, got his life back together, and became a first-round draft pick of the Baltimore Ravens. And now he's on one of the best offenses in the NFL. This is what happens when you have intervention, when people are trying or even talking about suicide, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, or even just a friend to talk to. And that's what people need. Someone to let them know that their life is of value, that, you don't want to end it like this.
Yeah.
You never know what greatness is there. And Hayden Hurst is evidence of that, Charlton. If you save that life, you can really find out how productive that life can be. Now he's an all-pro tight end in the NFL.
That's very well said. It's not just military. It's a lot of people. And it's nice when you can reach out and touch somebody's hand and you can help them. You reach out and touch their hand by calling 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they can get some help. I love when we talk about giving people help, Big C, and not just about who won the game, because I know if it helps just one person, just one, and we know that it helps more than one, but I really love giving that out. Also want to say that Big C Sports on the real estate side is launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020. Been talking to a lot of brokers that are very excited about having the chance to tell their clients they can put their listings on television. Everything that we see, for the most part, in this society is sold on television. From cars are on television, banks are on television, food is on television, luxury cruise lines is on television. A lot of things are on television. There's always bank commercials about selling you a loan. It's on TV, so that's why I'm really excited talking to some brokers that really understand real estate. If you can put your listings on TV, we'll have that coming with the Big C Real Estate Listing Channel coming up in spring of 2020. Big C, I know we talked a lot yesterday about this fight down in Las Vegas, and everybody's all jazzed about that again. And as I was telling you, I didn't think it was as hyped as Conor McGregor and Floyd Money Mayweather. I didn't think it was as hyped as Mike Tyson and when he had that fight against Holyfield 1 and 2. I didn't feel it the way I'm feeling it now just watching it. But before Big C, I know when you used to go out and play football, I remember you told me that you always got in shape before you even went to training camp. You didn't show up to training camp to get in shape. You had to be in shape when you got there because this guy's trying to take your job. What do you think of Fury coming in at 270 pounds and Wilder's coming in at 231? He was like 222 the first fight. Fury was around 250. This guy's carrying 270 pounds. Is that good for an athlete to take on an extra 20-plus pounds? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, actually, at 273 pounds, what you have to understand is for the first fight, Fury had to lose 150 pounds, Charlton, to fight in the first fight.
Yeah. So
he was badly diminished strength-wise in that first fight and didn't have the power that he needed to fight Wilder in that fight. He comes in more at a natural weight at 273 pounds for this second fight, Charlton, because you got to understand, this man stands 6'9".
Yeah.
So he can disperse 273 pounds over his 6'9" frame. He looks like a power forward in basketball. So I think it bodes him well because now he'll have the power to deliver the punches in this fight. I look at Wilder beefing up in the fight. Both men actually beef up in the fight. Wilder goes to 231. But Wilder, his contention is, Charlton, he needs to knock out, and that was the reason why he gained the weight. He knows that he won't be able to go toe-to-toe with Fury for 12 rounds in this fight. His whole modus operandi is coming into this fight seeking a knockout. And that's both men's mantra, is that they want to knock out their opponent. And in my feelings, I don't think that the fight will go beyond 6 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, that's because when I was watching the weigh-in today, and of course, you watch the women that are next to them, and they're scantily clad, and that's just part of show business.
I was trying to get phone numbers.
Well, if you're heavyweight champion of the world, you ain't got to worry about that. You got to push them away, Big C. But when you think about it, who was it? When a man don't take off, you ever go to the pool and that guy, he's at the swimming pool, but he has his shirt on because he's not really confident in his look, Big C. And people get body shamed all the time, and I don't really like that. But we live in a cruel society at times. But if you're proud of how you look, why not take your shirt off? Because you can't fight with the shirt on in the ring. I think subconsciously Fury feels a little bit when he compares his body to Wilder, Big C. There's no comparison in how they look. So do you really think that could help him in the fight, that he's carrying that much weight, even though he lost a lot to get into the fight? Your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's to his benefit because he'll have more endurance, Charles. You got to think about the lack of hydration you have if you have to lose 150 pounds in a matter of 5 months to fight somebody.
Yeah.
Your body is totally diminished. I mean, your muscles are not as strong or as hydrated as they need to be. You know, taking off a fight, a shirt in a weigh-in means nothing. I mean, you're going to have the shirt off when the fight starts.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Going up there, looking for camera shots, Charlton, in the weigh-in, whose psyche does that help?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're taking a punch, it's not about having a shirt on. You want to protect your face.
Yeah.
He had his face uncovered.
Yeah.
That's all that matters in a heavyweight fight. You don't see a lot of body blows, and Fury will throw more body blows than Wilder will in this fight. I mean, you can go up there looking like a Chippendale dancer.
Yeah.
But, you want to be able to be standing when the fight is over, not sitting there laying down, seeing what your abs look like.
Yeah, I know. Was it Ruiz and also Joshua? They had that same kind of comparison. Ruiz was like out of shape, didn't look like he worked out in 6 months, and he went in there and got the knockout. And so, again, Tyson, when you think about how tough he's been, 30 fights, 29 wins, 20 of those wins have come by knockout, and they had the draw. But he was taking a nap twice on the canvas when they had the draw. Again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. That's why they have three judges.
But you think about that. He knocked the man down twice,
Yeah.
and he was able to get up. So think about the psyche of Wilder in that situation. Everybody that he had knocked down before was not able to get up. So does his punches have as much effect on a guy who stands 6'9"? I mean, going down in a fight is okay. I mean, I watched the fight with Dokes and I'm trying to Shavers.
Yeah.
When there was 6 knockdowns in a heavyweight fight, it was the most vicious heavyweight fight I ever saw down in Las Vegas years ago, Charlton. 6 knockdowns in this fight prior to the 7th being the knockout in the fight. So, I mean, just because you knock somebody down and that guy gets back up, that's got to wear on your psyche. Hell, he's getting back up.
Yeah.
After all, I gave him all I had, and that wasn't enough.
Well,
so think about who has the mental advantage in that scenario. I've taken the best that you can give, and I withstood it and fought you to a draw. Nobody else has ever done that to you before.
I remember when George Foreman fought, he had a fight against Joe Frazier, smoking Joe Frazier, and Frazier had beaten up Ali. But Foreman knocked him down, I think, 6 times. And normally they stop it after 3 knockdowns, but 6 times. And he was beaten to a pulp by Foreman. That was one of the only times that I was really afraid for a man being mortally wounded in the ring. And, of course, I was a young boy watching that. But it didn't stop Frazier from coming back to fight. It's just a matter of who you're fighting against. But then again, Deontay Wilder, he is more chiseled. He was actually injured in that first fight. Didn't make a lot of it well known. So some people say, yeah, he's just selling wolf tickets. But he's 43-0, Big C, in the ring, where it counts. 42 guys went to sleep in the ring, 42 knockouts, and actually 41 knockouts of those 42 wins, and they had that one draw, Big C. So when you send 40 guys to take you know how you tell a kid, go take a nap, and they say, I don't want to take a nap. And you say, yeah, go take a nap. If you don't want to take a nap, you got to go read. So the kid decided to take a nap instead, Big C. So he's put 41 guys to take a nap. You know how grandparents say, go take a nap, Big C? He did that twice, even though, Fury did get up off the ground. But I think also psychologically, that gives Deontay Wilder more confidence that I was hurt. I didn't take this guy as serious as I should have. And I'm going to put him down this time within 6, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, but like I said, when you look at it, you hit the guy with your best shot.
Yeah.
And he was able to withstand that twice. That has to worry on the psyche of a guy that said everybody that I've knocked down prior to this was not able to get back up. Now, I recall a fight with George Foreman and Ken Norton. George Foreman hit Ken Norton in the chest.
Yeah.
Ken Norton couldn't get back up off the ground.
Yeah.
And that was the second time that he put him down.
Yeah.
He said, enough. Mike Tyson, when he put people down in fights, Charlton, they never got up.
Yeah.
That period. And the thing about the people at Wilder's fight, do you know anybody that he has fought and knocked out? That's the thing about it. You can have a great knockout record, but you fought half these guys in your garage at home, a couple of them in the parking lot outside the liquor store. So, I mean, this is the thing you're looking at. Show me some guys with some credibility on their record. Show me that where they were having top 10, top 5 fights. 42 knockouts look great.
Yeah.
But show me how many of those guys were ranked in the top 5 in the world.
Yeah, it's just amazing just to be around the fight business. Over the last couple of years, I really started when I was 11, just being around boxers and fighters and seeing how it's a real business. You can sell wolf tickets, but when you get inside of the ring with somebody, it changes things a lot. Like in the UFC, when they get inside the octagon, there's a lot of tough guys They're not as tough anymore. As Mike Tyson says, once you punch someone's nose through their brain, Big C, I don't know why you would want to do that to another man, but that's the thought. Intimidation factor, there's no intimidation factor among boxers, Big C. But I'll tell you what I am pleased with. And I'm pleased with it because it matters to me. And maybe I'm naive, but I don't see that racial angle that we've normally had when it's black versus white. And most of the UFC garbage with Conor McGregor over the last couple of years, whether he's going at someone's religion or their ethnic group, and the crowd was just, cheering them on like the good old boys back in the day, the lynch mobs. I'm glad I'm seeing classiness right now. I haven't seen that in a long time in the fight business, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, it's always been there in the professional boxing game, Charlton. You're talking about the MMA where you get that type of crap that flies away. Boxers have always had professional etiquette towards each other.
Yeah.
This is nothing new. This is what's expected from boxers, to have the professional etiquette. And we've seen this forever in the boxing game. Yes, you have your weigh in, stand off and stare down, Charlton. But when it came down to boxers respecting each other because of the craft that they work in, this has always been in play.
Well,
regardless of ethnicity. The last racial divide fight I ever saw was Larry Holmes and George Clooney.
Yeah.
And that was because it was the Irish out of the Northeast, Charlton, wanting to have a white regain the heavyweight title.
Yeah.
But Larry Holmes made quick work of him in about 5 or 6 rounds where he knocked him out. I mean, and he toyed with it.
Yeah.
He tortured the guy because of that you saw the racial divide. But this is back in the 80s, Charlton, early 90s, when this happened with Larry Holmes. Matter of fact, late 80s, with Larry Holmes and Clooney in that fight. But we don't have that type of mantra in the boxing world overall, because boxing has been what it has been. The Klitschko's held the world title for half a decade, Charlton, and they were white Russians. And no one used the racial divide, even when Ruiz fought. The biggest knock against Ruiz was his body type, not his ethnicity. Boxers respect each other.
Yeah. Well, we say that, but there's also, they got the way of a loving disrespect. I just want to go over some of the greatest fights in the history of the universe, and everybody has their own opinion about who those fighters may have been and what the fights were. But I would just say Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. The third one, it happened October 1st, 1975. And, there was talks about it being the Thriller in Manila, and Ali had some terse words. He said, it will be a killer and a thriller and a chiller when I get the gorilla in Manila. Now, if a white man had said that to a black man, they'd be fighting before the ring, Big C. But Ali did that. I know he later felt remorseful about that, but he was trying to get inside of Frazier's head. At the end of the day, those men did have a lot of respect for each other. So that goes on within maybe the same racial lines. If they were different color, Big C, that would not fly at all, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that was the time and an era that America was living in at that time. Those guys were gentlemen to each other, as well as they were vaunted enemies when you think about what they did over time. I mean, they had 3 trilogies, in their boxing. I think the first fight in Madison Square Garden between the two, when Ali came back out of exile and fought, and he lost in a 15-round decision, Charlton, I think, to me, that was the greatest fight that they had.
Yeah, a lot of people have that same conclusion, Big C. But again, everybody has an opinion. But you believe, with the kind of money we're making now, it's amazing. No one's making like Floyd Money Mayweather. He has his own mint machine, from what I understand. Ali only made, I'm saying only, it was 1975, $9 million in that fight. Frazier only made about $5 million in that fight. That was down in the Philippines. Could you imagine if they were fighting today? Ali would be up around, 30 million, 40 million in that fight, and Frazier maybe around 40 million. Your thoughts?
Well, Ali created the first $1 million purse in the ring in boxing, Charlton. He also created the first $10 million purse in that first Frazier fight that they had in Madison Square Garden. That was the largest purse in the history of boxing at $10 million.
Yeah.
And his magnetism and his promotional ability, Charlton, created those large purses of that era. So as we look now at the money in boxing, as well as any other sport, it has escalated as time has gone on.
Yeah, and some people call that one of the greatest sporting events of the 20th century. Just an amazing fight. I would say also, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the list, Sugar Ray Leonard. This is one of the fighters that, outside of Ali, that I would make it my duty to find out when is Sugar Ray fighting. You can see a lot of fights that were free on TV back in the day. But it was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hitman Hearns, September 16th It was 1981, Big C. Angelo Dundee told Leonard, "You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it." Believe it or not, Angelo Dundee, a lot of people, love or hate promoters, but people felt that he was a good one. And he also told Leonard, "You make more money, with white promoter than somebody who looks like you." He was honest, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that was the boxing game at that time. Angelo Dundee was good at what he did, being a corner man, Charlton, and a trainer.
Yeah.
But I like the second fight between Hearns and Leonard. And Hearns got robbed in the second fight. He was winning the first fight until he got tired. He went into no man's land trying to be a boxer instead of who he was supposed to be in that fight, or a slugger, and going in taking Leonard out, because he was winning that fight against Leonard until he just ran out of gas.
Yeah.
But in the second fight, he outboxed and dominated Leonard, and they called it a draw because of Leonard's popularity.
Yeah, Leonard did have a lot of popularity, Olympic champion, Big C. But they were both great fighters, but Leonard did have that, what they call the paperback test for the black American fighters. Think about the money. I almost feel bad for these guys compared to today's money, Big C. Again, it was 1981, but Leonard made reportedly $11 million, and Thomas Hitman Hearns made $8 million for that fight. It was called the 1981 Super Fight. Prices for tickets were $50 up to $500. And according to Sugar Ray Leonard, everybody has an excuse, like Wilder was saying he was injured for the first fight against Fury. Preceding everything was going to plan, but about 2 weeks before the bout, his sparring partner by the name of Odell Hatley accidentally struck him in the left eye with his elbow, and the next morning his eye started to swell, and he said that affected him all the way up into the fight. He even thought about postponing that fight, but $11 million said, "I'll fight with a sore eye." Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what boxers go through, Charlton. They're always going to be hit in the face, and you have to deal with these situations whether you have a cut or just a swollen eye.
Yeah. Now, here is in the Latin boxing community, oftentimes, no matter who they are, Roberto Duran or anybody, the black men have ruled boxing really since they've allowed them to fight. But a lot of people would consider one of the best fights in the history of the universe would be the great Julio Cesar Chavez versus Meldrick Taylor. That was March 17, Big C, 1990. Among the most controversial fights of all time, and that was according to Ring Magazine, the fight of the decade for the 90s. It was both, Taylor's finest and most tragic hour. He would never be the same after the brutal beatdown that he took in that loss to the Mexican icon they still call Chavez. Big C, your thoughts?
Julio Cesar Chavez was one of the greatest fighters of all time, Charlton, and I don't care what weight class you're looking at. Anybody who can go 83-0, Charlton, in the professional ranks, you have to consider that nothing but greatness, because we will never see that again, that you go 83-0 in the professional ranks without losing a fight. And that was Julio Cesar Chavez. So when we talk about dominance, you can talk about the guys that everybody knows from a media perspective.
Yeah.
But the people that understand and knew boxing knew that Julio was the greatest fighter to ever live.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And again, say that again, because we talk about, your friend, the guy that makes his own money, down in Mayweather. But did you say 83-0, Big C, your thoughts?
83-0. Everybody talks about Rocky Marciano at 49-0. They talked about Floyd Mayweather getting to 50-0. Julio Cesar Chavez was 83-0 before he had a controversial draw that ended his win streak, just like the Wilder Fury fight won, Charlton. Julio Cesar Chavez was hit with a controversial draw.
Yeah.
But here's a guy that knocked out, that won 83 consecutive fights, professional fights. We're not talking about stuff that people didn't know. He was fighting world-class fighters. So unless you were a boxing aficionado, you didn't know that. I mean, guys who came along with the highlight shows.
Yeah.
But Julio fought everybody who showed up, didn't care, and beat the hell out of them.
Yeah. I remember a skit that the great late Richard Pryor had. He was going to fight, and he wanted to get into a ring with a real boxer. As he said, this guy's a killer. And he said that he got in great shape. His legs were strong, and he had his stamina. But when he got to the ring, he got intimidated because the guy was beating himself up. And he said, the man beat himself up. I know he don't give it a bibbly-bib about me, Big C. This fighter still get intimidated, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that was Richard Pryor in a skit. But, this is one of the mantras of boxing when a fighter goes into the ring. He is hitting on his own face, trying to chisel it up, Charlton, to get it used to the blows that it's going to take, because you're going to get hit when you're in the ring. Yeah,
speaking of getting hit in the ring, now I know everyone has their flavor of who had the best fight, just like they have judges that will judge it. Whatever they want to judge, they got 3 judges. They don't always agree. Marvin Hagler versus Thomas the Hitman Hearns. It was April 15th, tax day, 1985, and someone had to pay up, Big C. Many people call it the most electrifying 8 minutes ever. It was called The War. It was the promotional name given to the class by Bob Aaron. And you think about this. Thomas Hitman Hearns was one of the hardest punchers ever. We think about how Wilder is right now by scoring knockouts. He knocked out 30 of his first 32 professional. 30 of 32 people went to sleep. Big C, your thoughts?
Thomas Hearns and Marvin Hagler still to this day is the most vicious fight in history. Michael Dokes and I'm trying to think of the other gentleman's name that had the 6 knockdowns was the second most vicious fight that I ever saw.
Yeah.
But when Hearns and Hagler fought, Charlton, this was a fight that you couldn't even catch your breath. I mean, it was 3 rounds of pure ecstasy from a boxing fan's perspective.
Yeah.
When you sit there and you watch these 2 combatant gladiators go after each other, Charlton, and it was unbelievable because you knew with each blow that was thrown in that fight, Charlton, that somebody would go down.
Yeah.
It was the biggest name fight up until that time. But, you know, the heavyweight fight, it was Ernie Shavers and Michael Dynamite Dokes.
Yeah.
That fight was the second most electrifying fight, and they both were in Vegas.
Yep.
But Dokes and Shavers, when they fought outdoors in Caesars, Charlton, I mean, it was like you knew that somebody may not live in that fight. That's how vicious that fight was. And I know that Hearns and Holmes get the most electrifying fight, which it was because it was nonstop until Hearns could not get back up.
Yeah.
At least in the other fight, it went 7 rounds.
Yeah.
This fight went 3.5 rounds, Charlton, and it still resonates in everybody's memory.
It still does. I think the Motor City Cobra, he had recently moved up from the welterweight to junior middleweight and then to middleweight. And, I mean, it's just amazing. You're knocking out the first 32 professional guys. That's truly amazing. Now, again, I remember one of the first professional fighters I ever saw was in Hayward, California at a gym. It was George Foreman before he actually fought Ali. And I was afraid for Ali. I thought Ali was going to get beaten up because I'd just seen Foreman destroy, when I saw him destroy Joe Frazier. I still remember, down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The late, great Howard Cosell. But it was George Foreman versus Ron Lyle, Big C, January 24th, 1976. Remember this, George Foreman was knocked down twice in the 4th round. Ron Lyle went down in both the 4th and 5th round. Ring Magazine called it the fight of the year for 1976, and that's saying a lot because there were so many great fights that we saw back then, and you did not have to pay some pay-per-view to see it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Wide World of Sports broadcasted all the great fights back in those days, Charlton, and Ron Lyle and George Foreman was just one of those typical heavyweight battles that we saw of that era. I mean, all the fights were great because it wasn't about what we see now where everybody wants to make it a production.
Yeah.
You walked your butt from the locker room to the ring, took off the robe, and went at it.
Yeah.
Now it's like we have to have 37 minutes of introduction prior to a fight.
Yeah.
Everybody's cold by the time the fight starts. You'd walk from the locker room, you were sweating when you got into the ring.
Yeah.
You were ready to throw knuckles. And now it's like we got to get in 9 commercials, 27 introductions before they even take off the road.
Yeah, they got to pay the bills. And speaking of the guy, you know, Ali had so much influence. People talk about now how, if we look at football, how Patrick Mahomes is going to have a lot of influence for the nouveau riche African-American quarterback. Even white guys coming out of college, if they have that kind of game that they can run and pass and very accurate, throw back against their body. But Ali was amazing. I think Sugar Ray emulated Ali a lot. And then the big guy, in my opinion, that emulated Ali as well as anybody is the great Larry Holmes. And he had that fight against Ken Norton Jr. I want to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When I come back, I want to get your thoughts about that June 9th, 1978 fight with Larry Holmes and Ken Norton. Man, what a great fight. We'll take the Big C timeout. Come right back. We're going to talk more about some of the best boxing matches in the history of the universe. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network, in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Also launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020, and we want to make that the best in the universe for people trying to sell real estate. Going back to Larry Holmes and Ken Norton, Big C, June 9th, 1978, Ring Magazine, and they said it was one of the best fights also of the 20th century. But think about this. The most exciting rounds in boxing history is what they call it. 7 of the most exciting rounds. And that same publication had Holmes as 5th and Norton 22nd in the listing of the 50 greatest fighters of all time. But Larry Holmes reminded me of Muhammad Ali because he emulated his style. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he didn't emulate his style, Charlton. He learned from his style. You got to understand, Larry Holmes was a boxing, he was a sparring partner of Muhammad Ali for 5 years. So all of his craft he learned working under Muhammad Ali. That's where he got his upcome in boxing, by being his sparring partner. So it wasn't that, he was copying him. He learned from him, so he modeled him every day in the ring.
Yeah.
And that fight with Ken Norton, I mean, that was for the heavyweight championship.
Yeah.
And he went out and dominated him. Norton had fought Ali twice and had split fights on him, Charlton. But when he got in the ring against a much younger Larry Holmes, who used the same style as Ali did, he was no match.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there'll never be another Ali. I don't care how many guys come along and try to do. Ali was more, I would say, just as important out of the ring, or maybe even more important out of the ring as he was in the ring. And he
was more important out of the ring than what he was in the ring. You got to understand, Ali's style. Ali got his style from a guy called Kid Gavilan.
Yeah.
Kid Gavilan was out of Los Angeles, a Hispanic fighter. That's who Ali emulated it, and people don't know that don't know anything about boxing, but that's who Ali copied. Was Kid Gavilan, a middleweight fighter. He copied the foot shuffle and everything else. It was just like Michael Jackson copying James Brown, and no one figured out how. Everyone thought that Michael's skills were unique to himself, just like everyone thought Ali's skill was kin to himself.
Yeah.
But he copied Kid Gavilan. Kid Gavilan was fighting when boxing wasn't on television in the 50s, Charlton, and that's when Kid Gavilan was dominating the middleweight ranks. But Ali would watch all his boxing reels and copy that in the ring.
A lot like the late Elvis Presley, he copied a lot of the great African-American entertainers, too. And everybody learns from somebody, and that's very good knowledge, Big C. But when I saw 2 of my favorite fighters, when I saw Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler, it was April 6, 1987. I was a young boy, Big C. I was in college, and loving the fight game because you didn't have to have the pay-per-view. You could just get together with a lot of college friends, and we'd all sit around and watch the fights. But the decision was controversial. Jose Carrera scored the fight 118-110 for Leonard, and as you mentioned, that Leonard had that paperback flavor that Angelo Dundee told him about. A white American's gonna love you, the way you speak, the way you look. And sometimes that got him even in good shape with the judges, Big C. So that was considered a very controversial fight. Some people thought that Hagler won that fight too, but Hagler could never win the American favorite black man, if that makes any sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Hagler did win that fight. Hagler was ripped off that fight. Leonard won that fight on a popularity contest, because how do you score a fight 118-110 when you never even knocked the guy down? That means that you dominated every round of the fight. And there were a couple of times in the fight where Hagler had Leonard ready to go down in the fight, where he had pushed him into the corner and he was just hanging on till the bell, Charlton. So you could see how that scorecard was weighed in that fight. And Marvin Hagler never fought again because he knew that he didn't stand a chance in popularity in America, and he resided to Italy after that and took on his acting career. But he was robbed, and he was robbed in broad daylight.
Yeah, and the thing about Sugar Ray Leonard, I would say like Ali, but maybe faster than Ali. Sugar Ray Leonard was one of the guys, as African-American, that mainstream wanted to put him on TV because he spoke so well. He spoke the King's language more so than a lot of other guys that did not have that same vernacular, Big C. So they really wanted to see that he was the cash cow. So even when he lost, according to your eyes, he won according to the bank statements. I want to get your thoughts. Why was that more important? And let's just say for the people that put money into these guys, and that's White America, mainstream, being pejorative, but I think people know it's true. Why was it more important to have Sugar Ray Leonard stick the way he looked, the way he spoke, over a guy that really beat him in the ring? I thought also, Big C, your thoughts.
Because he was marketable, Charlton. That was Sugar Ray Leonard's mantra. He was marketable, and he was doing national endorsement commercials, not just boxing in the ring, but he was a poster child for many major corporations. And so this is the reason why they wanted to keep Leonard on top.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a great boxer in his own right, but there were a couple of times where he got the benefit of the doubt because of who he was.
Yeah, I mean, I always love when the guys that win actually get the win, but it's about who you know and how much money they put into you. You know, you told me this many times, and I think a lot of people can juxtapose it to NFL football. When guys are drafted and there's a lot of money put on them, they're not always the best player at that position on that team. But why do they start, people say? And I was talking with a guy today about the Super Bowl with the 49ers and also the Kansas City Chiefs, and he just couldn't believe the 49ers lost that game. I think he put a lot of money on the Niners in that game, and I just have my own opinions about it. But why is it that guys that have the biggest contracts and are more marketable, you need them to win or you lose your money, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you've made that investment, and you know it's not good for an organization to be paying a guy $2 million, and he's sitting on the bench, and you got a guy that you're paying $750,000, and he's sitting out there being productive. And I mean, that's been throughout the history of sports. It's that you pay guys on potential, and you draft guys on potential. It doesn't mean that they're always going to pan out. You can look up and down the list of all sports, Charlton, and find number one draft picks that couldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And people laugh at them, say, you're making this much. You know? And there were teams that I was on that guys were drafted in the first round, and you're sitting there looking at them, you what? You were the number one draft pick?
Yeah.
And you're whipping this guy like he stole your lunch sack.
Yeah, it's always something that people think about. I want to cover just two more fights, and then I want to get into a few more things, you know, going into the world of sports, going into this weekend. But also, when we consider, you know, greatest fights in history, again, just like judging, you know, 118, 111, that's an ambiguous at best, Big C. But Riddick Bowe and Evander, the real deal Holyfield, November the 13th, 1992. Also, Holyfield, an Olympic champion, Big C, and he had that body that looked like he made it in a factory. He's still in pretty decent shape, considered for his age. But Holyfield, he wasn't dynamic like Ali. And he wasn't ferocious like Mike Tyson. But when you got him in the ring, his skills were so good. I really loved watching him fight, Big C. They had the 1992 fight that was considered Fight of the Year by Ring Magazine, went 10 rounds, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Riddick Bowe was out of the Sugar Ray Leonard camp. That's who promoted Riddick Bowe. And I was at his first fight when they had a fight, and Sugar was sitting in my seat, and I had to ask him to get out of my seat.
Did he get out of the seat?
Bodyguard found out that we had played with the same professional team years apart from each other.
Yeah.
And so we had a great time at the fight. But, you know, Riddick Bowe, you know, he was a guy that came from nothing, and he was an Olympic gold medal champion also, Charlton.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was a guy that many people thought would be in the likeness of a Muhammad Ali because of his build and his boxing style. He was more like a Larry Holmes, but he just had a lot of demons that he could not shake. And you know, when you looked at Evander Holyfield, he was what steroids could make.
Yeah, hey, well, I didn't hear that. Maybe you said that, not me, Big C. But I want to think about this when it comes to punches landed compared to, you know, punches that connected, okay, and made a difference. And the punch total, I still remember from that fight, the punch total, Holyfield landed 242 punches. Riddick Bowe landed 357 punches, or over 100 more. However, the punches thrown, Evander only threw 475 punches, so he was more accurate, you would think. Both threw 711 times. So like Wilder and also Fury, you could throw a lot of punches, but if they're not hitting hard enough, like you say, to bust a grape, Big C, with a sledgehammer, does it really count as a punch? And the percentage-wise, they said Holyfield landed at 51% and Bowe 50%. So I think that's something to pay attention to also in the Fury and Wilder fight. Just because you throw a punch and you connect, it doesn't mean that it's an effective punch. Sometimes it's just a slap thing to push people back. So we'll have to keep an eye on that too coming up. But the last fight, Big C, that I want to just cover, because to me, it was something that I'll never forget. it's really one of the only fights that made me afraid is when I saw Ali and I saw Foreman, and I remember that I thought Ali had no chance against Foreman, but they had this thing, Ali Boombaye, Ali Boombaye. The crowd was into that chanting thing, and it psyched out Foreman. And it was actually October 30th, 1974, and Ali was the #1 contender. He became the second man to regain the World Heavyweight Championship. Don King's first major boxing promotion, the Rumble in the Jungle, shown on closed-circuit TV throughout North America with broadcasts in 100 countries, was the first fight meant to start at 4 a.m. Zaire time to accommodate North American television. Big C, Ali was a trend in so many ways. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Ali was about the money at that time, Charlton, and he knew that if he got George Foreman past the 5th round, that was something that he wasn't used to seeing. And he talked about that in the promotion of the fight, when he was sitting there talking about round 3.
Yeah.
Round 5, round 7, round 11. He said George Foreman never heard those numbers before in a fight. And so it would play on his psyche, and which it did.
Yeah.
George Foreman had to question his fortitude in that fight, Charlton, once he got past round 3.
Yeah. Well, I still remember I was not shaking. I just didn't want to see Ali get beaten. And I thought it was going to happen. I'm so glad that did not happen. I said that would be the only one the last one to be covered. But I want to go one more because it's good, just like that good tasting, whatever you put in that beverage, Big C, it tastes good. So I want to do one more. And I remember this fight also made me sad because I didn't want to see my guy, Sugar Ray Leonard, lose. I bought into him. He reminded me of what black men have always been. It was the champions, even though he had to fight against the current. He reminded me of how dominant he was. And I remember it was June 20th, 1980. Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard, their first one. And when you think about it, I think Joe Frazier was ringside, and he was asking if Duran reminded him of anybody, and it was leading to a question assuming that Duran would be, remind Frazier of himself.
June 20th, 1979.
Well, yeah, 1979. And I think about that.
I was there in Montreal.
In Montreal, that fight, to me, it shook up the universe just because I don't think anybody was willing to see, Leonard lose, at least to someone that wasn't African-American. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I was pulling for Duran in that fight. To me, Duran was the most dominant fighter in the world at that time. And Leonard was the marquee marketing guy at the time. But Duran was a guy who came into that fight with no fear of anybody, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you knew that the Hands of Stone felt that way about Leonard. And his mantra was that he was going to come in and destroy Leonard.
Yeah.
He said, this is a pretty boy that I'm going to take off his mantle. And that's what Duran proceeded to do that night. I mean, you're talking about an electrifying atmosphere in the Big O.
Yeah.
There were 75,000 people in the stadium that night, Charlton. It was hot and humid in Montreal, but Duran handled business.
Yeah, and I remember some of the great work. And this is about the Wilder and also a Fury fight, too. And it's something that every fighter can think about. Angelo Dundee said, you never fight a guy's strength. You try to offset it. And Sugar Ray did not do that. Duran was being Duran, and Ray was trying to go with him. So think about that with Wilder and Fury. I don't know who's going to win this fight. The guy who can take a punch better and deliver a punch better is going to win the Fury and the Fury fight with Wilder. And I don't know who's going to be, but I do believe we'll see a trilogy. So those are just our thoughts, and everybody has their own opinion, just like judging fights, Big C, as far as who was the best fighter in the history of the world and history of the universe. Some people think Cassius Clay, Sonny Liston way back in 1964. People have that as one of the best fights in the world also. So I'm sure as this fight happens, there'll be more talk about the greatest fights coming up on Monday. So I know you're not going down to Las Vegas, Big C, because you said you don't like the heat. You rather deal with the rain. Is that the reason you're not making that flight down to hot Las Vegas, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I couldn't get a seat at the fight, but if you want to know one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time, you have to look at Ezra Charles and Rocky Marciano. Ezra Charles was a man that was in his late 40s. And Rocky Marciano, he took him into the 14th round before Marciano eventually knocked him out. But that was one of the most brutal and exciting heavyweight fights that anybody ever wanted to see. Ezra Charles was a true champion, but like I said, he was about 47, 48 years old, and Rocky Marciano was in his 20s, and he took him into the 14th round and was actually winning the fight until Marciano knocked him out.
Wow, it's amazing how knockouts can decide when the fight's over, not the judges. Hear that, guys? If you really want to win the fight, just have the guy take a nap, just like you send kids to go take a nap sometime. I'll see who takes a nap on Saturday night, and a lot of people will also see it too. You know, this Saturday night, we're going to see a heavyweight champion, unless more shenanigans happen where we get another draw. I don't think we're going to get a draw, Big C. But also, Alexander Ovechkin, Big C, this young man on the ice, Big C, he'll be skating around on ice on Saturday night. They're going to play New Jersey. And think about this. He's at 699. He's trying to get to 700 goals. And I hope he'll get it but this weekend. But maybe if he doesn't get it this weekend, he'll get it this month, Black History Month, Big C. There's so much about this great man. He was considered, again, born September 17th, 1985, referred to as Ove, the Great Eight, as Alexander the Great. He's a Russian professional ice hockey player and captain of the Washington Capitals, National Hockey League in the NHL. Prior to entering the league, Ovechkin actually played for Dynamo Moscow, Big C, in the Russian Super League 4 seasons from 2001 to 2005, and he returned to play briefly during the 2012-2013 NHL lockout. And I know as a player from Russia, Big C, when you hear about how the Russians are trying to hack our election system, and they actually did in 2016, they're trying to do it again in 2020. He's actually a good guy and doing things the right way, Big C. Your thoughts?
Ovechkin has been a true ambassador for the NHL, Charlton. He's been one of the most dominant scorers in the league over the last decade, and you think about him being just one goal shy of that magic 700 mark, Charlton, and only 7 players in NHL history have eclipsed that 700 goal mark. I don't think he'll ever catch the great one, Wayne Gretzky, because he's put his goal scoring and assists in a different stratosphere from everyone else. But Ovechkin has been pressing for the last 2 weeks, trying to get to that 700 mark, Charlton. He had been stuck on 698 forever, it seemed like, but now he scored one more goal, and he needs one more to get to that hollow ground of 700.
Yeah, and I hope he'll get it. Especially, it'd be nice to see him get it over this weekend. We talked about him being in the Russian Super League, and he returned to play. He had played in 2001 to 2005, and then returned to play for them briefly in 2012 to 2013. That was the NHL lockout year. Highly touted prospect Ovechkin, selected by the Capitals first overall in 2004 in the NHL entry draft. But what I like about his history more than anything, he won what's called the Calder Memorial Trophy as Rookie of the Year, scoring 52 goals, 54 assists to lead all rookies with 106 points, and finished 3rd overall in league scoring. And he's widely regarded as one of the greatest scorers in the history of the universe. So still a young man. I hope he gets that done. And he's 6'3", 236 pounds. So he has the weight to fight in the fight against Wilder or Fury, but he doesn't quite have the height. He's only 6'3", Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the size of hockey players, how they've grown expeditionally over the past 5 decades, Charlton, it used to be a small, quick man's game. Now it's a large, quick man's game. And I know over the years I had many hockey friends, Charlton, during my playing days, and we always would challenge each other. You know, I'd challenge them to come on out to football practice. They would always challenge me to come out to the ice, which I would abruptly back down from.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to get onto the ice with a man that has a nice stick that can poke you with it, because you don't want to see that happen too often. You know, I just really appreciate so much that's going on in the world of sports, and how people are really galvanizing around sports. We really had a great Super Bowl, I believe. We had a great Super Bowl event leading up to it. And then the NBA All-Star Game, or All-Star Exhibition, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was great also, you know, for the world of basketball. Some news that came out of L.A. is that the L.A. Lakers, they're going to waive DeMarcus Cousins. We know he has been an all-pro center when he played for the Sacramento Kings. He was traded to the Golden State Warriors, had a hitch in his giddy-up, never quite stayed healthy from there, and then went to play on the Lakers staff, but really just was never able to make it on the floor. But really, that just frees up $3.5 million of debt for them, and maybe they'll have some more money to entice somebody else, Big C, along the way. But the Lakers are still in a good spot. But are you disappointed? Not disappointed is a bad word. DeMarcus was about to get $100+ million with the Kings, and he wanted out because he wanted more money. And it's a shame. He did a lot for the community of Sacramento, but some people said he was too sullen, too macabre. And maybe because of that, they're not willing to let him ride the bench a little bit longer and get that free money the way Major League Baseball players does it for his guys. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, but has he been a factor in Los Angeles all year? I mean, he's been a non-entity. He's been hurt since he's been there. I mean, since he left the Pelicans, where he tore his Achilles tendon down in New Orleans prior to going to the Golden State Warriors. And once he got to the Golden State Warriors, he showed that he had a history of injuries that he couldn't get over. He tore his quad there, and then he tears up his knee when he gets to the Lakers, Charlton. As a guy who stands 7 feet tall and close to 300 pounds, once you get leg injuries, Charlton, your career is not going to be what it once was. And he never really established himself as an inside or an outside player once he got to the Warriors. So the thing with Cousins, I mean, he's going to have to take minimum money wherever he goes to until he can prove that he stays healthy.
Yeah, and we know that's very hard to do. I was talking with a brother of mine over the weekend, and we talk about how many guys go over to Europe and get medication and things that are good for them that mainstream won't let you do. I used to play football back in the day in college and also lifting weights and just trying to stay rigorous, Big C. Sometimes you have some back pain. But I met a guy today that covers a lot of the athletes in the Bay Area, and he gave me this cream. Barry Bonds I think it's the same kind of cream Barry Bonds got, Big C, back in the day. So I'm not taking any blood tests anytime soon. But I rubbed this cream on my lower back, and that was about 2 hours ago. And I'm telling you, I forgot my lower back was hurting by lifting weights and just trying to stay healthy and being rigorous like a lot of the young guys do. That cream has the name, I'll say 2 of the 3 names in it. One was called C, like Big C Sports, and the other was called B. I won't say the third name, but I don't feel any pain, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's always been many remedies over the years. I remember one time we had a team from Germany came in and they were training at our facilities some years ago when I was playing, and they had this cream that they gave us that we used with the ultrasound machine, and it alleviated all the problems that you had.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I want to go find that guy again. And I went anyway. Everybody got to do what they want to do. When some of our pharmacists say, well, I don't know if that stuff works or not, well, try it. Just try it and see if it's for you or not. I want to go tonight's NBA schedule. We have Cleveland at Washington. Dallas will be at Orlando. Phoenix will be at Toronto. Indiana will be at New York. The Knicks are back in town. Denver will be at OKC. Should be a must-see television with Denver playing at Oklahoma City. Boston at Minnesota. San Antonio at Utah. New Orleans at Portland. I hope Damian Lillard can get his giddy up back, Big C. And then Memphis at the LA Lakers. I can't really wait until this weekend has a lot of action-filled games coming up too, because especially in Los Angeles to see the Boston Celtics play the LA Lakers at 12:30 on Sunday. Really can't wait to see that too. If the NBA is fantastic, getting out of it now in the second half, Big C, any thoughts on who you feel may still be the front runners, or will things change the way they do in NASCAR, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the front runners are the teams that are leading the divisions. I mean, there's 28 games or so to go in the rest of the NBA season. 2/3 of it has already been played. I mean, I think the playoff brackets are already set. We're not going to see any, dramatic moves in the NBA. People are just trying to stay healthy and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they're trying to stay healthy, trying to get into the playoffs, and we know that they will. And I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the app that I really love is by Google. And Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, I want to just get a quick thought in the final few moments of the show today on this beautiful Black History Month, February the 21st, 2020. Many people have their thoughts on the best basketball team of all time, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on one of the most enjoyable basketball teams of all time. That was none other than the Jerry Tarkanian-led UNLV Runnin' Rebels. They were 34-1 in the 1990-91 season. They only lost one game And many people felt that that was a game where some good old boys had some shenanigans. They lost to the Duke Blue Devils by 79 to 77. And it ended UNLV's 45-game winning streak. At that time, UNLV was must-see basketball. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they had a good team at that time in 1971, but I mean, when you think about just the overall history of college basketball, when you had teams that went with perfect seasons, I mean, they rank up there, but I don't think that they're the top team of all time.
I think that 45-game win streak, believe it or not, it was half of what UCLA did, the 88 games in a row when they had the great Lou Alcindor back in the day. And I know that's in Walton. They had so many great. Russ Brook played at UCLA. Just so many dominant players that have played on the UCLA Bruins. And I don't know if we're going to ever see teams that run the table like that again in men's basketball. I know UConn
you
did
think
it.
about going back to University of San Francisco when Bill Russell was there.
Yeah.
They won back-to-back NCAA titles, Charlton, and they were undefeated for 2 years there at San Francisco. They won I believe it was 58 straight games that they won at USF. So when you look at the team under Walton with UCLA and John Wooden, when they won 88 straight games, Charlton, you think about the team with Lou Alcindor when they won 3 national titles with that team. So, I mean, there's been a host of dominant teams. You got to look at Indiana with Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
He had a perfect season there in Indiana, I believe, in 1976. So, I mean, when we talk about teams, you got to go beyond the television era where people were seeing the highlight shows. Yes, UNLV had a great team when they won the 34-1 in 91.
Yeah.
But I still think the 1977 UNLV team was better than that, Charlton, and they averaged 122 points a game during the regular season. So I think the 1977 UNLV team would have ran the 1991 UNLV team off the court.
That would have been amazing to see. I'm sure.
They didn't even have a shot clock or a three-point shot. So you think about how dominant that team was.
Maybe we can get some of those young kids down in Silicon Valley. You know how they do the simulation where they'll have NFL and NBA and college sports, and you can pit different years against different years, and they get a chance to see that. Also, there's a lot of people that thought the Kentucky team, the 1977-78 squad that went 30-2. Many people thought that was one of the best teams ever. And it's not about a team that went undefeated, because a lot of guys can go undefeated, like San Diego State is undefeated right now, but I don't think many people would argue that they're the best team in the country.
Think about your 1996 Kentucky team that was 34-2 and won a national title. So, I mean, they were a dominant team. You think about 1974 with North Carolina State when they knocked off UCLA in the semifinal round of the national championship. They went on to win the national championship, and they were the best team in the country, and everybody wanted to see them in the finals. And you know, the finals was anticlimactic after they knocked off UCLA.
Yeah, there's a lot of people also feel that 69-70 team, UCLA finished 28-2. I mean, there's just so much in college basketball. I'm sure we'll do more of that as we get into the world of March Madness, and I know that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. Big C, really looking forward to seeing that. Big C, I know the fight again down in Las Vegas. It should be the build-up that a lot of big fights have had over the years. We just talked about some of the greatest fights in the history of the universe, in our opinion, but everybody has an opinion. I hope we see a clean fight. I hope we don't see any shenanigans. I hope we don't have any issues about the judge has screwed somebody over. I hope that we just see good, clean fighting. Do you anticipate the same, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, this will be two combatants going into the ring with a pure disdain for each other. I think we'll see an outstanding fight that will go less than 6 rounds.
Well, 6 rounds, I would love to see more than 6 rounds, but I know a lot of the guys, they don't want to have they don't want to have to go to a decision, so I'm sure we'll see a lot of good boxing, and I hope that everybody stays safe. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I want to look at this day back in 1944, where the United Negro College Fund, UNICEF, an American philanthropical organization, was funded for scholarships for historical black colleges and universities.
It's always great when we have people that care about African Americans more than how high can you jump, how fast can you run, and how much can you dribble. You can always find more every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.